What's going on, young money hackers? Welcome back to another episode. I'm Charlie and you're here with Rhino. We're going to talk about all things property investing in Australia. And this morning we have a really interesting question from one of our students, a really high quality question that we love to see. You know, it's good to see that we're working with people that are inspired to take action and really thinking, using their minds, looking for the best possible way to accelerate their property journey. The question that they've asked us is, what is the better option to purchase a property through your personal name or through an entity such as a trust? There is a lot of pros and cons to this strategy. So Handol is going to share a few things about what he knows, and I'm going to share a few things about what I know. And we're going to answer this because it can honestly be a game-changing strategy depending on where you're currently at. Of course, this is not advice. This is just what we've taken from working with heaps of people and doing it for ourselves. Hadol, what are your thoughts on this, man?
Yeah, so just cannot stress the importance of getting your own independent advice. This is an educational platform. So, but what we know, we are happy to share. Now, this is an interesting part of the property journey that you would consider this. And if you're starting to consider this, you're actually quite advanced. So for those of you who are just joining us for the first time today, look, the caliber of discussion, okay, within our podcast, it will range, okay? And that's the beauty of our discussion, is that it will service both the beginners and then also the advanced. It's good for the beginners because they know what is to come. It's good for the advanced because they can reaffirm the basics with the changing of the market conditions and the times, which is really, really important for every property investor. Now, so the question is, should I go for a trust versus an individual? Well, look, it will depend entirely on your circumstance. The way I understand trust is that it exists as an asset, as an income distribution channel, right? It's like when money comes into this thing called a trust, you can then distribute it according to your discretion. The way it will structure itself out is quite technical, and we probably won't go through it today. But after being told about what trust is, I hope that you can start to ask better questions to your dream team. So your accountants and your lawyers and I guess the way you want to structure it in light of the benefits that you receive as a family. There's obviously other ways that trust can behave, which is called a unit trust, which acts more like a company where there are set divisions in place so that whatever income comes in, there are set percentages allocated to what's called unit holders. Now, trusts have been quite popular, not only for the distribution of assets, because and what distribution of assets effectively achieve is that it may reduce the amount of income that will come to you in your personal capacity by distributing it to different parties. And so that's been one benefit. But another benefit also is from an asset protection point of view, that the liabilities from your other business activities do not cross-collateralize over to the asset that is under a trust that you've set up to acquire.
Okay, so can we just simplify that down, that sentence you just said?
Yeah, oh wow, I thought I said that very simply, but
no,
okay.
Even simpler. Let's go even, like, let's say that I'm 6 years old and you're trying to explain to me as if I'm in the first grade, like what you just said. So they don't cross-collateralize, meaning you have one entity there, it might be a business that you run, and you have an entity with properties that you purchase through within that trust or entity or however you've structured it. They don't cross-collateralize, meaning what?
Yeah. So let's say trust don't exist in this world, and you're just you, and let's say your name is Jack. So Jack goes and buys a property, right, in his name, and the property has his name on it. On the title, it says Jack. And Jack also has a car, and while driving on the road, he made the wrong turn or crashed into somebody else's property or things, or even maybe hurt their life or incapacitated another person by way of an accident. They sue him, and he now owes them a couple $1 million, right? Now, they're going to come after everything that Jack has, one of which is his house. So they're going to come after that. So in life, and now the liabilities like that is kind of crazy, but let's say you run a business, or even if you work for somebody, there can be overhanging liabilities over you. And when the liabilities become realized, right? When the liabilities become real, then you might have to cough that money up. And if you don't have that in cash money, you might have to sell some of the stuff you've got. But if you have it under a trust, effectively trust is its own legal entity. So they do not, what we call cross-collateral, they do not cross over. So
Fantastic.
That's where there is some asset protection benefits as well within that too. It goes on and on and on and on.
Okay.
Like this.
Now, a more specific question that we've been asked is, can you borrow money through a trust? And is your borrowing power different within a trust entity relative to your borrowing money to buy property in your personal name?
Right. So this is incredibly important to understand. I have seen time and time again, scaled property investors prefer to purchase property under a trust instead of their own personal name for various reasons. And there's state tax implications for properties owned under a trust. Okay, so meaning that there could be some benefits within that too. Now, that being the case, as it gets more complex, the more seasoned investors like to buy with a trust. Now, here's the thing though, trusts do not, in the first instance, have a strong borrowing capacity compared to somebody who makes income themselves and try to put a property under their own name. Think about it this way. When you set up a trust, it's a new entity. Like I said before, the entity is different to another. Like, for example, what happens to Jack is not for me, not my business to cover. Does that make sense? Just like that entity becomes independent from Jack. So that entity usually is formed prior to purchasing a property. So before you buy a property, they set up a new trust. Now, this new entity was born yesterday. It's nothing. It has no income. It has no existing assets whatsoever. It's just there. And yet, that is all it is limited to. If the banks want to come after this trust, the trust is nothing more than probably the property that it's about to acquire. When they give you a loan at the bank, they look at the property you're buying, but also who you are as a person. Do you make some money? Have you got some other properties or assets? Do you have a car or shares? They ask you a whole bunch of questions. Do you have any other existing debt? If you have a lot of debt and you owe a lot of money to other people, they're probably not going to loan it to you.
But that will still affect you. Those factors will still affect your borrowing capacity through that trust. Is that what you're saying? Whoa, hold up, Landlord Society.
Are you sick and tired of the rat race and you want to start building wealth with property and generate passive income?
Then come and drop us a follow on Instagram and DM us the word Landlord.
The word what, Charlie?
The word Landlord, like the Landlord Society.
Okay, wait, Charles, what's our Instagram handle again?
At landlord.society.
You heard him, everybody. DM us the word landlord to our Instagram to learn more about property investing. Now back to the podcast. No, but here's the thing. When you have a trust, those things become disconnected. So even if you might be a doctor, even if you might be a doctor and you make a lot of money and all that kind of stuff, if you set up a brand new trust, they're not going to, there's no connection between the trust and this. Now, from an asset protection point of view and a taxation point of view, your lawyer, your accountant will say, yeah, go set it up on a trust. That's amazing. But from a financing point of view, they will say, well, it's a bit of a blow to your borrowing capacity. Now, I say it's a bit of a blow. It's because of this. Now, there's ways around it. So depending on the products that's offered by the different banks that you will explore out there, and hopefully you won't explore it, but a finance broker will explore it. If you need to get a loan under a trust, what banks have typically asked for is a guarantee from you, right? To say, I guarantee that if this trust fails to make repayments, I will. So then they will look at the guarantor and go, oh, what's your capacity at the moment?
Okay.
And because it is a bridge across, it will reduce your borrowing capacity a little bit. And for the rich people out there, they're just like, okay, even then I can still afford to buy $6 million properties. It's all good, whatever. So that's why they keep going. Now, that doesn't mean you need to be able to afford $6 million to be able to buy properties under a trust. It may make sense to buy a $200,000 property under a trust, and people still do. So based on that, you can borrow under a trust, but albeit at a reduced capacity. Here's another thing. Banks view negative gearing as a positive thing.
Yes. Okay.
Which is interesting. we don't view negative gearing as a positive thing, but banks do. And put it this way: if you buy a property under your own name and you pay more interest than it earns, right? Or obviously, or or if you rented it out, that is, and the rental income is lower, and then you obviously spend more on the property than you're earning it, because that is a loss that will reduce your income and therefore reduce the amount of tax you'll pay. The banks see that as a positive element, whereas this element disappears when you put a negatively geared property onto a trust. So then the losses that you're making within a trust do not carry forward. You cannot distribute a negative balance income to a beneficiary under a trust. So because of that, you will not be able to clock in the negative gearing. So banks will look at trust and go, oh, there's no negative gearing in it, so we cannot lend you as much money. Now, it is of a reduced, so overall, it is of a reduced capacity that this will happen. Now, here's the problem. If you go to an accountant, they will say, oh yeah, get a trust, right? Because it protects you A, B, C, and D, right? And they got no idea how financing works. If you go to a lawyer, they'll say, yeah, put it under a trust. That'll protect you against all the liabilities from your business, or maybe a spouse that wants to divorce you. That's another big liability, right? We all have that liability, right? You get a spouse and she or he divorces you, right? And you've got a big old liability in there. So like all that, in all the sense of those things, they will say, oh yeah, this trust might be advisable. But here's the thing. You go to the finance broker and you say, I've got a trust. They go, sorry, we can't lend you that much money. And they got no idea how to do it. They just know how to get a home loan. But a good lawyer will be able to think and advise you in the context of your financing and for what purpose you're trying to buy a property, right? A good lawyer will be able to then give you advice in context of you trying to get financing for a property for growth in your portfolio. A good finance broker will be able to understand your structuring in context of your property growth and your portfolio growth, and for your and your financing capacity.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Now then, how do you then ensure that the advisors that you're working with, whether it's an accountant, lawyer, or a finance broker, is able to do these things? And finding a good one is going to be pivotal in you designing a portfolio geared for growth, rather than just single-faceted approach where you compartmentalize, oh, I just need to go for the tax benefit. I just need to go for the legal protection. I just need to go to borrow the most amount of money. No. You got to think about it in a holistic way. And in my experience, the best advisors to work with, right, were the ones that owned a lot of property themselves.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I found that to be true as well. Yeah.
Exactly right, because they've done it before. Like if I go talk to an accountant that's never gotten a home loan for themselves, not once, twice, but like 10 times, right? Because you want, the accountants have a lot of property themselves.
But they'll understand.
You can have a lot of property,
yeah, but
and be an accountant.
They will understand the nuances when it comes to property investing specifically, when it comes to setting up your trust or setting yourself up with the right structure. So yeah, I think that's some others. Yeah, really good. So
like for me, I have no respect in people who say, oh, I've had a 20-year career, or my respect doesn't quite develop at that point. It's like, oh, I've been a lawyer for 20 years. I'm like, is that all? Because that's pretty easy to do, because you graduate law school and you wait 20 years and that's how you get a 20-year career in law, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty easy to do, unless you're completely deadbeat broke and you've been living off Centrelink, right? So, So what you got to do is you got to ask them, okay, you've been a lawyer for 20 years. Were you able to afford about 10 properties in that time, mate? And then if he goes, yeah, all right, well, then you got something to hear from him. Yeah. But if he says, nah, it wasn't my thing, and you'll sit there and go, so you're telling me you love practicing law way more than buying properties and having a passive cash flow that beats your income, that gives you freedom and happiness and joy of spending more time with the family? Either you're a freaking psycho, or you're like, what have you done with your life? I've genuinely asked that question, right? So especially in our climate in Australia, where property is very, easily geared for growth and all that. So same with finance brokers as well. Finance brokers will make 1 to 2% on the transaction, including trail, right? I know the financial structure of their business as well. Like, if that's the kind of money you've been making and you've been closing that many loans, why? And you've seen all these people, every time you close a loan for these people, I'm guessing a lot of them are making a lot of money. You've seen these people do it and you don't own a property yourself. Like, what's the matter with you? So you got to have within your arsenal these people that actually have walked the walk before they talk the talk.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And far too often, we ourselves are too compartmentalized to ask them the question, oh, so you get all their advice and you go, oh, yeah, they must be good at what they're talking about. They could have lied entirely. And second of all, we don't actually build a relationship with them. You got to actually build a relationship with your lawyer, accountant, and you got to be friends with them. Just like, okay, so like, how's your life going, mate?
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Are you in a position to advise me in every way?
Yeah. No, that's good. Get to know them first, understand the situation.
Sorry. To answer the question of getting finance under the trust, if your trust has existed for a while, let's say you've got 2 or 3 properties under that trust already, then the trust itself has a lot of income, let's say. Right, it's got like 80, 90 grand a year in passive cash flow, like across 3 multiple properties or whatever, how many properties you decide to put in there. Then it becomes an entity of its own and it's got better serviceability than you might, right? It's got no other liabilities, it's got no other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in that situation, once the trust becomes seasoned after multiple ownership, then the trust might have borrowing capacity that surpasses your own. And that's the ideal situation you want to be in. And that's why the wealthy people continue to, borrow within a trust.
That was what I was going to ask you next.
As a protection benefits as well. Yeah.
That's what we were going to cover next. So when it comes to recycling borrowing power within a trust, I've seen content, and that this is an interesting topic, because when let's say your borrowing capacity in your personal name is higher, like what you mentioned before, right? Due to the fact that you might have a high income or whatever it is, like you have low liabilities, the banks look at you, they think you can borrow, they say that you can borrow $1.5 million in your personal name, but in the trust you can only borrow 700,000, but that becomes recyclable. You can recycle that debt because the asset you buy might be positively cash flowing, and that would then, the banks would then look at that and look at your borrowing capacity in that entity based on the cash flow that property is producing, then allowing you to recycle that borrowing power to buy more property.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's when it can become very beneficial to invest.
Exactly right. And look, like I say, in almost every episode, I think I talk about this, is that it's deal focused as well. Like if you go and buy an awesome deal, and the valuation is like out of this world, right? And like it's a good property, right? And the cash flow is like crazy. And this is more typical of like commercial assets. If most of you are out there like buying residential assets, like that's fine. But even then, if you're out there buying a good property, you find a way to make it work. And then obviously, if you need to put it under a trust, and then albeit, right? So I think overall, the way you need to approach this, you need to have a pretty clear understanding of what a trust is. We're not the best people to advise you on what it is. We can kickstart your curiosity of what it is and what it can do for you. And the right thing for you to do is then take this curiosity and put it in front of advisors who are smart, right? Look, like I keep saying, in every discussion, when we talk about, renovation, right? I keep telling people, guys, we're not here to become best renovators, and we're not here to become best plumbers and bricklayers in town, or partitioners, whatever, or painters. We're here to be better property investors.
Yes,
that's it.
Yes, we are.
We're not here to be better lawyers and better accountants and whatever, albeit sometimes what you end up knowing as a property investor in law can sometimes surpass that of lawyers and stuff, which is funny. But, we go, oh, look, we're not here to become better than them or have their job. We're just here to become better property investors. So what I want you to take away from this is that ask the right questions and build a relationship to the point of trust that will then enable you to take action in the right direction. That's what you really want to be doing.
This question that we have been asked has been a really good one. It's been a really good point of discussion for us on this podcast today. So more of those questions are welcomed, guys. Intelligent questions that are going to move the needle are going to benefit you, and they're also going to benefit us, so then we can keep creating and help you guys out along the way. So we really appreciate this. We really appreciate high quality questions like that, guys. They're always welcomed. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Young Money Hackers podcast. Until next time, peace out, guys.
Peace out. Later.